Welcome back to the Innovative Agency, everybody. Sharon Torek here with you. And it's been a while since we've had a chance to talk on the show about one of my personal loves. You all know I love intellectual property, but probably not as many people know that I got my start working in the agency world basically because of my trademark experience. And so I'm a brand lover. I love talking about brands. I like talking about brands that I love. I like talking about what makes a strong brand. And so we're going to get a chance to do all that and dive into this whole issue of brand integrity, something called brand governance. Don't worry, it's not as legal or as dry as it might sound. And why it's important for those of you who are in the business of helping your clients create and grow strong brands. And so to help me through all this discussion, I'm so happy to welcome Deirdre McGlashan, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of BrandGuard, to the show. And so, Deirdre, thank you, first of all, for being here. I'm excited to have the conversation.
Thanks for having me, Sharon. I'm really excited about this.
And you're sort of a rare find in a podcast guest in that you kind of have attacked the issue of brand from lots of different directions. So you've founded and sold at least one agency yourself, right? You've been in that agency world day to day.
Exactly. I've been in an agency. I founded an agency. It hasn't been sold yet, but I left that agency. I've also worked across the agency group. So I've been in WPP. I was recently at Stagwell. I've also been part of the Dentsu network. So I've been in agency world for quite a long time as well before joining BrandGuard.
So what compelled you to make the jump from day to day running of an agency into and we'll talk about the technology side of what you're doing in a little bit, but what made you make the leap into AI from being an agency entrepreneur?
Honestly, it was this tool. I think, and you said we're going to talk about brand governance and how it's not dry and how it's necessary.
Mhm.
When I saw this tool, I thought, what an amazing thing, what an amazing application of AI to be used to protect a brand.
Mhm.
Now, I think that we all in the world, we all know that generative AI is here and we'll all be using more and more of it. And I think everybody knows that every new technology brings with it unintended consequences. Do you know
Mhm.
what I mean? And
Yeah.
things that we have to fix on the back end. So I've been around a long time, started in digital agencies. And back then, when we didn't have a form of measurement, we chased the click. And of course, that ended up leading to fraud and bot farms and things like that. So we had to employ solutions like third party ad serving. So with every new technology comes a problem. And I loved the fact that this company seemed to be trying to address a problem before it came here
I
by
love that.
saying, people want to use generative AI. So why don't we point it in the right direction instead of it being a free for all? And if we tell the generative AI, you can be used, but to support and promote a brand and to keep that essence of the brand, then you're kind of training it along the way before a problem comes. I'm not saying there won't be problems, but I just wanted to be a part of a solution.
I love that. Um, so let's talk first about brand integrity and brand governance as it relates to brand integrity. Um, what do you think agencies who are in the business of branding, sometimes it's the sole focus of an agency, sometimes it's part of an integrated practice, as we both know, but what are the things that you wish that they knew that they are probably not as fluent in about integrity and protection as they're helping their clients create and establish new brands or grow the ones that they already have?
That's a great question, Sharon. I think that what I wish agencies knew is how important it is to maintain the integrity of the brand, to be consistent. And I think every agency knows this. And I think every agency does a great job for their own assets. And I think that, but when you think about a marketer, probably most of your audience's clients are probably using a portfolio of agencies. And so if you think about it from the brand standpoint, the brand wants to make sure that they have consistent use of logos, their brand colors, their fonts, all of those distinctive brand assets that they have, as well as look and feel, tone of voice, because it just builds for a stronger brand. And I think that sometimes in today's world, particularly with digital marketing, we have so many opportunities to have so many messages everywhere and hyper personalization that if you're not mindful of that because of the way performance media works and performance marketing works. You're optimizing towards an objective, which tends to be more focused on the consumer doing something in action, like a click or a purchase. And you can, if you're not careful about maintaining and upholding the quality of your brand, you can optimize your way away from your brand in a way. Do you know what I mean? You can make it less important. And we all know that strong brands are incredibly important.
How do you have that conversation from agency to client? And typically, you may be working with the chief marketing officer at a client if it's an enterprise sized client, or at least a mid-sized company that is large enough to have somebody who's just running marketing. And so conceptually, maybe they understand that it's important, that the brand is an important part of the assets of the company. But maybe the day-to-day work is done between the creatives or the account team and the mid-level marketing folks, or sort of the frontline marketing folks at the client. How do you get them all to consistently think about and care about sort of governing and protecting the integrity of the brand when they're dealing with 9 million things a day and not necessarily looking at long-term consequences?
Yeah, I think that everybody wants to maintain the integrity of their brand. I mean, brands spend so much money, as you said, some of these agencies, they're dedicated to building brand identities. Do you know what I mean? So clients pay money to have their brand built, to have the perfect logo, to have a beautiful, beautiful typography, beautiful colors. And so I think that everybody knows it's important, but you're right. In the day-to-day, things like quality assurance, things just slip by. And
Mhm.
so when you're trying to approve like 50 assets at a time, sometimes something might slip by. We're working with this one customer who says that they can quantify how much money they lose every time the wrong font is used in a digital asset.
Huh.
And
Based on the
so
performance, I'm curious, based on the performance of the
based on
ad.
the performance, yes, exactly. They have done extensive testing and they have been able to quantify. They've actually been able to put a financial value to the loss that they have when the wrong font is used. We're working with another customer who talks about colors, for example. This is more of a packaging conversation, but they
Right.
say that if how every brand has, their specific brand colors, if the packaging color is wrong, the consumer oftentimes thinks that it's old or counterfeit, and so therefore doesn't buy it. Right, exactly. So if you think about all these like
Fascinating.
small impacts, when we as consumers have to we have to put a consumer hat on. We as consumers have to cut through so much clutter every day. We see so many things, and how do you make these judgments?
Mhm.
So I think that everybody believes that it's really important. I think where mistakes happen or where mistakes slip through is usually because it just didn't get caught or people ran out of time. And that's why, for us, effectively automating it, making a platform that can do it mechanically is what we're aiming for, to kind of help with that. One of the things that one of the things we believe is, in the world that we're heading towards, where you have more and more D2C products, and then with generative AI being able to produce more and more marketing, what generative AI can do is it can make pretty good, like mediocre to good stuff, but it
Mhm.
can't produce great. Great requires human, at least for
Mhm.
now, but great requires human. And I believe that great will always require human, because it is finding that thing that triggers us as people. And so if
Right.
you think about a future where we're not really going to see bad anymore, I think, in a few years, but we're going to see a lot of mediocre to good. So how do you stand out? You have to be excellent. And to be excellent, having a strong brand, having consistency in your brand, really knowing what you stand for, and being able to have somebody spot something, go, oh, that's brand X, is going to be more important than ever before.
Mhm. I love this, and I think having, the conversation from with your client, if you're an agency who does this work, from the perspective of, think of the consumer who might not buy your product because they're looking at a presentation of your brand that doesn't ring true to them for whatever reason. I think marketers in agencies who go to the clients with those kinds of real life cases,
Yeah.
have an easier time driving the point home and maybe making everybody hopefully slow down a little bit and make sure that governance is something that is taken seriously. Um,
Exactly. And I think it starts with the brand book and the brand vision as well. Do you know what I mean? Because if you think about brands with strong brand books, it gives them latitude to create. It actually gives them more creativity because they can create more things that are still in line with that brand and still true to that brand. Whereas brands that might not have that strong of a vision, but just like, this is what we must look like, kind of in a matching luggage kind of way, you just end up with a lot of the same.
Right, right. Yes. Well, good point. And trying to expand on use cases for the brand is a whole different issue, right? And as you just
Yeah.
mentioned, and trying to figure out how to expand it while keeping the integrity in place is something else that agencies have to keep their eyes on. I could talk with you about brands all day. I love brand conversations. I love the trademark components and brands, but I wouldn't be fair as a host if we didn't also talk about how AI is impacting this. And it sounds to me like that's a passion point of yours too, and that's maybe why
Yeah.
you're sitting in the chair you're in every day versus running your agency every day. And so it sounds a little bit, and I hesitate to use this word because we're talking about AI, sounds a little futuristic to think that um, machines can prevent brand plagiarism, brand infringement. Um, Talk about the approach of AI and using it, layering into some of the other things that you're doing to maintain integrity of your brand, helps you go farther faster.
Okay, let's talk about how agencies or marketers, but let's take it from the agency lens. Let's think
Yeah.
about how agencies can use AI in general, right?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of it starts from, well, when you're doing creative concepting, it's a great, great place to get some ideas from. It's a great thought starter. I think that we've all these days been using chat GPT to maybe like start an article we were writing or something like that to give us some ideas. So I think it's really good for that. I'm going to talk mainly in the creation area because there's a whole school of machine learning and algorithms used for media targeting and media optimization. But and that is also artificial intelligence, but I feel like that's much more mature. Do you know what I mean? We've been doing that for quite a while. So I'm going to
Yes.
talk much more about the creative space because I think that's really where the application of AI is quite new. So I think kind of that thought starter is a great idea. I think one other thing that's really interesting is rapid prototyping. So I don't know if you saw ChatGPT's recent post. It was called Sorrow, their new video maker, text to
Yeah.
video, and it was said I think it's literally called Sorrow First Thoughts, and then it's I think 4 or 5 examples of some beautiful work some individuals and creatives have done. You can see playing around with it. One is a full narrative film. It's a narrative short film. It's really good. And others, you can see that their agency is kind of testing special effects and different renderings and in a way showing how they could. So if you think about how they could rapid prototype, you can cut the storyboard out in motion now for a client before they review, before you shoot, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Then you've got, as I said, you got the thought starter part, got the optimization part. I think personally, there's a lot of things that people within agencies can do to help themselves in their own work. Using AI note takers has really been beneficial to me because then I can spend more time listening and conversing and not necessarily so much time taking notes because it summarizes it.
Right.
I've got a friend who uses another application, Claude from Anthropic. He works with a bunch of engineers and he's a marketer and he doesn't necessarily understand what all the engineers are talking about all of the time.
Right.
So he uses AI note taker. And then what he does is after the weekly meeting, and then what he does is then he condenses it. And then after then he catalogs it, and then oftentimes uses Claude to then find key themes that he can use as a marketer, which I thought was fascinating. I thought, what a cool use of that. And then, so as we're moving through the creative process, you can make yourself more efficient just with being able to use it to answer emails, et cetera, et cetera. And then you get to the actual doing of things. And not only can generative AI be used for rapid prototyping, but it can also be used to create like visual assets, for example. I was at a conference recently and I saw this one large brand and they had a rule. They were experimenting with generative AI, but their rule was you could use it, but only in media that can be taken down immediately in case there's a problem. Do you know what I mean? And so they did a
I do
bunch of
know what you
social.
mean.
You're a lawyer, you get it, you get it. And so they did a bunch of really cute social posts for Instagram stories around their mascot in all these different situations. They were in space, they were in a telephone booth, they were in a park. And it was a really cute little series that, if you think about how much time that would have taken from a compositing standpoint for a designer to do, or the overhead of having to physically shoot that stuff,
Right.
you can see how quickly that was reduced. So you can use it there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get not to the end, but to the governance side of things. So you've done all these amazing things. How do you make sure that it's on brand? How do you make sure that it stays on brand? And that's why we built BrandGuard. So we kind of slot into each of those. We've got a set of models that evaluates look and feel and tone of voice to make sure that it's spot on for that brand. And then we've got another set of models that evaluates things like the precision elements, the logos, the fonts, the colors, et cetera. So what we hope to do is enable the freedom to use all of those amazing tools out in the world, but then have a one-stop shop for that brand to then be able to check all of that work, because one agency might be using Midjourney, another agency might be using Dolly, another brand themselves might be using Stable Diffusion, and all of those models are being trained on their own things. And
Right.
so how do you have one, you'd appreciate this as a lawyer in a way, how do you have that one check to make sure that there is a true understanding of the brand that's evaluating all of it? Right now it's human, and people aren't using AI at volume yet, so they can check it. So, you as a brand manager can sit there and check it. But when people are really using it at volume, there's no way a human can check thousands of units a day.
Right. Well, one concern I have, we don't really devote the show to legal topics, but one thing that I like to stress when it comes to the interplay between AI and brand development, and by that I mean creation of a new brand or a new brand extension, is that we are not yet at the point where you can dispense with traditional trademark due diligence
Oh no.
and brand adoption. And I don't think we're going to be there for a while. And AI is helping, us in the legal profession be faster with turning those results around. But I think one of the things that excites me about the brand governance tools that you're creating using AI is that it's a step to help you remain compliant once that brand's launched. But, just taking a step back for those agencies listening who are developing brands, and, are fearful of launching without knowing whether or not they're stepping into a trademark problem or their client is. We still need to be deliberative about it. And, that's the lawyer cold shower walking into the room. But
No,
I think we're
100%.
getting faster, and the tools
Yeah.
will help us be even faster at that.
Exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because those were the two sets of models. We've got five model categories. There's two model categories that are really focused on the brand. One of the sets of model categories we have is, actually, you'll love this one, Sharon, called regulatory compliance, because
Nice.
there are a lot of categories that have advertising regulations around them. And that's
Mhm.
exactly it. So the first set is trademark, because you want to make sure you're not encroaching on other people's trademarks. But
Right.
also, if you're working in pharma, if you're working in finance, if you're working in
Healthcare.
alcohol, healthcare, gaming, there's so many industries. So we have these universal models that we're working on that will help with that. Now, are we the absolute, should you be able to launch anything and feel like I don't have to consult a lawyer? Absolutely not. We see our platform as a tool to enable marketers and a tool to enable the man in the middle. We don't see the humans coming out of the loop, but what we do hope to do is make the work a lot less for them. So instead of having to review 1,000 assets, the tool can say, this 500 is garbage, throw it away altogether.
Mhm.
These 400 are pretty good, but these 200 are excellent. We think you should go with these. You say that you want everything to be about 80%, so you could throw away those 300 too. Now there's just 100 for you to look at. Do you know
Mhm.
what I mean? So it kind of just helps hone in so that the person who's reviewing can then spend their time, which is on the more valuable part that does require human input. It's that gray area.
Yeah.
It's on the border, but I'm trying to evolve my brand. So I want to look at those that are on the border. You called it out because it's on the border, because I'm trying to evolve my brand. Good job, tool. Now I can look at it and go, yes, this is the direction I want my brand to be. And then we evolve the tool with it, because you
Right.
tell me, yes, I love that. Now the tool goes, okay, great. That stuff now goes into my database to say that stuff's on brand now. And so
Right.
the tool event evolves as well through usage.
Right. So humans ultimately deciding what humans will see as a representation of the brand, but using all these tools to streamline and help you cut through a lot more options a lot more quickly than you would be. Because one of one I will say one of the over the years, one of the biggest tensions between are the agencies who are doing the right thing and they want to pre-clear a lot of choices before they even present them to the client.
Yeah,
um, it's costly to do that, right? So you have to kind of pick
exactly.
your favorite babies. And
Yeah.
so maybe you're making choices for your client that they wouldn't make for themselves because you want to present a more limited set of options to them. And the tool will help you maybe expand that universe a little bit.
Exactly, because if there's a body of regulations that you can point us to, we can build models around that so that we can do a lot of that pre-checking, as you say. So
Mhm.
therefore, maybe the pre-checking then allows you to actually explore a lot further with more options, and then only bring the ones that actually have a very high likelihood of then being cleared. Because the problem, as you said, also in the old world, is that you gotta kind of pick one baby to check, and it doesn't
Yeah.
allow you to let the others grow and see which one's actually the best one. This kind of allows you to let the flower a little bit, and then go through a check that isn't a formal check, but an informal check against the same regulations through a machine, and go, okay, actually, of these four, these two actually might pass, and then you can choose your favorite baby out of these more developed ones to take into review.
Right, right, right. So from the perspective of an agency owner who's also now building a technology, what advice do you have for leaders and owners of agencies or account leads or about how to have the conversation around brand integrity, brand governance with their clients when their clients might not even understand what is at stake? How do you make the conversation more automatic, more organic to the work that you're doing together? Any tips there?
Yeah, I think one of the things is making sure that your client actually has the rules and regulations documented. You'd be surprised at how many clients I've worked for in the past that don't even have an official style guide. It's just in everybody's head. It's almost, it's intrinsic knowledge in the organization. They work with the same agency for the last X amount of years, and everybody just kind of knows it, and everyone can just kind of feel it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I think that's where it's the hardest to actually police, because it's never been written down. And so I think one of the things is making sure that you have something written down, because how are you going to, number one, how are you going to onboard new people? But number two, because it will speed that up. But number two, as you move towards a world of generative AI, how are you going to train your model? Because a
Right.
model needs to know what your brand stands for. That's actually one of the other tools that we're building. We're about to launch it, I think, in 2 weeks. It's called BrandGuard Builder, because we work with a lot of customers that have it in their heads or in their agency's heads, but all they have for us are campaign guidelines. We're like, we actually need to know, like, your Uber vision, your font, all of these things that kind of overarching. So it's a very easy to use, simple place. It prompts you and then starts building out some things for you to say yes or no to. And so therefore it actually helps with our training as well. And so I think that's the first thing, is making sure that you've got it written down. You can't judge against it if you don't have it written down.
Yeah.
And I think that people feel more comfortable when they can see it and go, yeah, that's right. That's right. That's exactly right. And
Mhm.
then I think the other thing is, I think most brands do get the importance of it, but it's how do you prioritize it? How do you make sure in your very, very, very busy day that
Mhm.
this is something that kind of goes top of mind? I think it's just setting up regular reviews. And of course, I'm going to say, get a tool, but even
Yeah.
without a tool, I would say that, just set up regular reviews. I used to do this with my clients as well, where we would oftentimes sit down and just look at their body of work for the last year. And if it was a long-standing client, on an annual basis, we would look at just the body of work over the last year, not chest beating, hey, look, I did this, but hey, this is your brand's outward face. How are we feeling about this? What are we
Mhm.
thinking about next year? Before you get into campaign tactics, just we still good here? Does it still feel right? And then you could start thinking about and being more choiceful about evolution of brands as well.
I love the idea, and I'm hearing the suggestion to not only organically bake in creating a style guide when your client doesn't have one, and making that sort of conditional for your branding work. And then also including sort of this audit component, like a brand audit for a time certain, right? Because I think a
Yeah.
client's eyes might glaze over if you say, I want to do a brand
Yeah.
audit. Like, how long is that going to take? How much you're going to look at? And but defining it in time and scope, right? So that
Yeah.
and these are all, additional ways for agencies to think about monetizing the work that they do, but it's also integral to the branding work itself being more successful. So those are really good concrete takeaways for agencies to think about adding into their processes as
Yeah,
they.
and I don't think it's a Yeah, and I don't think it's a heavy lift because I think most agencies do post-campaign analyses. I know from the media agency side, we always did, but those were the metrics. But we also did have like thumbnails of all of the creatives. And
Mhm.
so that's all you really need to do because you're not investigating every one. You're just saying, these are the 12 campaigns I
Look and
flighted.
feel, yeah.
This has been their look and feel. I really only need the thumbnails. Actually, you could probably you could pull those slides out of like a post-campaign analysis, for example, and
Mhm.
have those ready to go.
Awesome. That is
Because I know
awesome.
it sounds like a huge amount of work. The last thing I know how busy agencies are. I know how slim our margins are. Okay,
Right.
so the best thing to do is to be able to reuse work that you had done before, and then just I've always find it useful to look at things in aggregation because that's when you really start to spot things. That's when you start to spot patterns, and you also get to spot anomalies before you go too far.
Right. Right. That's also where niching helps you is pattern
Yeah,
spotting as well.
yeah.
But well, and I am glad you mentioned margins because for everyone who's listening and multitasking right now, maybe take a break
Mhm.
on. I think that as you look at margins and you look at ways to make them broader, introducing tools that can help you create the same deliverable without doing the same amount of human based work, something that we need to be smartly evaluating as we look at it because the agency world is tight when it comes to its margins. It's not easy making a profit, and even the most profitable agencies don't always have an easy time getting there. So use every edge and advantage that presents itself to you, in my view.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this is one of the education things that I've been doing with the team here. These are a bunch of enterprise software engineers who are artificial intelligence specialists. They don't understand marketing at all. So in their minds, they thought the way the creative process worked was that someone came with an idea, an asset was made, and it goes through, and at the end, someone checks it, it goes immediately out. I was like, oh, heavens no.
Oh no.
And so I took them through like what a typical creative process looks like, especially if you're doing TVCs. Do you know what I mean? Because those are
Yeah.
just, there's just so much more intricate. And
Right.
it blew their minds that it's not a big bang at the end, it's three assets and it goes through a QA process. And I explained to them where I see a fitting is actually what I wanted to show them was we fit all along the way. So when that designer is sourcing stock photography, just at the very beginning, if they could do the long list review with our tool and not bother the art director and only bring the art director in for a short list review, that's one cycle that art director saves to do higher value work, to come up with a new thing for that client to upsell, to work on a pitch, let's be honest,
Mhm.
all of that. So when it goes into production, if it could go through instead of having the producer do the QA, if it go through the tool all along the way and make sure that the right logo was used, the right colors were used, the right fonts were used. By the time it hits production, being able to turn it into pre-media goes a lot quicker because,
Right.
as you know, it's much easier if you start with 5 good assets than if you start with 5 mediocre assets, end up with 20 mediocre assets, and then have to check them all.
Right. I love what you just said for two reasons. So the first is that you are, as a company who is developing an AI tools, you're educating the engineers on the real business implications of what they're doing so that the tools can
Mhm.
actually be helpful rather than be useless pieces of plugin that aren't helping us achieve our business goals. And then secondly, stressing that integrating AI into your workflow as an agency, it should be about taking away the things that cost you money to do
Yeah.
that aren't adding as much value as they're costing you and freeing you up to do that more profitable work. That is the the sort of the righteous purpose, in my view,
Yep.
of bringing AI into your business to perform any function. So if you look at it from that perspective versus one of fear, like it's going to take,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to fire 3 people because what they do, AI now does, I think is more healthy. Because
100%.
yeah,
And quite frankly, I think that if you apply AI correctly, it will actually help with staff retention. We work with some customers that are allow their brand to be used by others in a co-marketing way. You know what I
mhm,
mean? And
yeah,
so these other companies get to use their brands, but have to follow the rules. It has to be the right logo, has to have the right clear space, the right demarcation, all of those sorts of things. And we work with a number of them. And the average that we've heard from all of them is between 30 to 50% of the first passive assets they have to review aren't good, and they have to kick it back. And
wow,
it's logo clear, it's like there are very few rules. It's just like 4 rules, but 30 to 50%. So these poor people, it has to go to somebody's art director, it has to go to that client's art director, because you need a design eye for them to write the same email to yet another Joe Bob and say, wrong font, wrong color, you broke the clear space rule. And so they're very interested in having our tool as the first pass before submission. Only when you pass our tool can it get submitted, because in theory, that clears up that 30, 50%. Because quite frankly, that 30, 50% that they have to respond to is the work that designer or art director loathes. It is not forwarding their career. It is not helping them drive the vision forward.
not
It's the
stimulating.
donkey. It's
Yeah.
not stimulating. It's the donkey work that makes people really lose the will to live. So I think
Mhm.
that using tools in the appropriate way to take some of that work away should increase staff happiness and staff satisfaction, because they can then turn their real job, turn to their real job and do a better job at their real job. And once again, if we go back to that theory in the beginning that generative AI can make everything mediocre to good, if they can take that time to really perfect their craft, that puts them in excellent. And so
Mhm.
therefore, they learn about AI, they're comfortable using it as a tool, and they can use that saved time to educate themselves more about AI and to do their job better. It gets them to excellent, which I think is better job security.
Right. I totally agree with you. And I totally agree that that's the mindset that we should and need to adopt because it's here, right? And we need to figure out how to use it as a tool it is for better, versus fearing the adverse impacts that we think it might have, on our business in particular or our industry at large. And so
Yeah.
I love having the opportunity to talk about these tools with someone who actually founded an agency and understands how they land right in the agency world.
Mhm.
Because the fear is there and it's real and it needs to be addressed and dealt with so that we can all move past it and figure out how to use these tools to make us more profitable and smarter. So where do you see over the next 18 months or so the biggest impact on the agency ecosphere being from using generative AI and integrating it into workflow or to create deliverables for clients?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the way the AI tools are advancing, I mean, if we think back about 6 to 9 months ago, and we saw those rudimentary tests of text to video, and they weren't anything anybody would want to show anybody outside of their mom. And then you look at Soro now making making 1 minute videos that are really high quality. One of our head of AI predicts that based on this trajectory, we could be at 1 hour piece of hour-long content, text hour-long content within a year. So
Wow.
I think in the next, yeah. So I think in the next 18 months, the biggest shift for agencies is to effectively start to get on the train, because this isn't going to go away. And I know that I started in agencies in the very, very early days of the commercial internet. And I remember having to argue with my clients that this costs this. And they would say, my son could make that in his basement. Like, no, your son cannot make an entirely secure system that has e-commerce in his basement. But yes, your son can build a website.
And
and, and so My advice to agencies is to start learning, start educating yourself, start testing, start playing. Most of it's going to suck at the beginning, but keep playing and keep playing, because if we're not careful as agencies, the more these tools are prevalent and out in public, we will find ourselves having that argument again, because Joe Public is going to be very fluent in these tools and starting to build some pretty interesting things for brands. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that, yeah, and those to me are one-offs, they're experiments, and sometimes they're fantastic. If you think back, I'm old, what's up from Budweiser? That was pure UGC. That was excellent. I love the fact that they jumped on it, but that's not repeatable. Do you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
team did
Not
not go
reliably so
on.
anyway. Yeah.
That team did not go on to build Budweiser's brand. So I think
Right.
the thing about agencies is we build brands. We help build our clients' brands. And so in order to stay relevant and not have that argument, you need to educate yourself so that you understand the difference between what's being made out there and what you guys are able to do with your sophisticated knowledge and all of your design skills and these tools. Because no matter what the technology, the most sophisticated user for it is always the consumer first. Happened with social, happened with the web,
Right.
because they're not bound by a brief. They're not bound by a cost structure. They are unlimited in their passion and their time. So they're going to push these tools to the edge further and faster than an agency ever would. So you don't want to be, you're never going to be as fast as them. But let's say they're going 100 miles an hour. You better make sure you're running at least 60, because otherwise you don't have a defense against them.
Right. No, I think so. And you're going to always be chasing the technology as a business. But I always say technology and then business runs up to keep up with it. And then, we lawyers kind of sweep up the mess, but I never really include the consumers. And you're right. I need to be inserting them between the technology and the businesses who are trying to use the technology to, create enterprises or, move causes, whatever we're organized to do. But it's the consumers of the information or the products that go first, and then it's the
Yeah,
business that's keeping up with them. So
exactly.
I need to amend my 3-step process to add that 4th step there. So thank you for that. Well, it's been so awesome to get your perspective. And where can agencies go to learn more about the work that BrandGuard's doing, in case it's a tool that makes good sense for them in terms of brand integrity, brand governance, and the work that they do day to day?
Well, we would love to hear from anybody who's interested. Our email address is contact@brandguard.ai. The website is brandguard.ai. And anybody out there who's interested in this brand guide builder that we're about to launch, if you'd be interested in getting on the beta list for that, please contact us at contact@brandguard.ai. And we'll make sure that you're on the beta list, that you're alerted as soon as we have it. We'll be adding more modules all the time, but it'll launch with 4 modules, and we would love to get your feedback on it.
Awesome. Well, sign me up for the regulatory one. I would definitely love to
Great.
see what that looks like and to play with that. That's been very intriguing to the legal nerd in me.
Fantastic.
All right. Deirdre, thank you so much for joining us on the Innovative Agency. And thank the rest of you for spending time with us today. And we'll see you all on the next episode. And until then, stay well.
Thanks, Sharon.